And we are back on Otherworld Radio. Now about our featured guest tonight, Peter Moon. Peter Moon is known internationally as the author of the Montauk Project series of books. In tonight's interview, we'll discuss with Mr. Moon The Mystery of Egypt, The First Tunnel by Radu Sinamar. In this latest book, in a series of amazing books by author Radu Sinamar, we invite our listeners around the world tonight to check out our archives of previous interviews that we have with Mr. Moon about these series of books. Tonight, join us in this very special interview with Mr. Moon as we will explore far beyond your ordinary imagination to describe people, places, and events that have molded the past and will influence the future in decades ahead. Join us on this journey tonight as the mystery unfolds. Without any further delay, Otherworld Radio would like to welcome international author Peter Moon to tonight's show. Peter, are you with us?
I'm with you. It's nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, Peter, thank you for coming on the show tonight. There's so much to talk about within this hour that you're going to be with us. So let's just jump right in. Peter, for some of our listeners who've not known too much about you, can you tell our listeners just a brief summary about you personally, where you grew up, a little bit about how you got started on this amazing synchronistic journey leading to where you are now, getting out the work about Radu Sinamar's series of books, Transylvania Sunrise, Transylvania Moonrise, and now this latest book, Mystery of Egypt, The First Tunnel.
Okay, I'll have to be very summarizingly brief. I grew up in California, starting with Southern California, and finished in Northern California, where I sort of discovered my spiritual path. And I've written about these in various books, but it becomes with becoming self-aware, and of course what interested me in the esoteric path was science fiction. Ray Bradbury, Arthur C. Clarke, and to a lesser degree Robert Heinlein. And when you getting on the esoteric path, that put me on the esoteric path, and I discovered Taoism. And of course, it's taken me a long time to go through many different gyrations in my life, which finally arrives me back at Taoism, which is something I practice daily right now. But it's one of the things that got me so catalyzed into my current path was my association with L. Ron Hubbard, who was mostly known in society as the founder of the Scientology, Dianetics and Scientology, but he was also involved in an event which will prove to be far more pivotal as time goes on. He was involved prior to Scientology in something called the Babylon Working with rocket scientist Jack Parsons. And I also got to know Jack's wife, Marjorie Cameron, who was the manifestation of that Babylon Working, a magical working which was designed to fix the universe. If you study the Babylon Working, you might think it was some black magic ritual, but it's not exactly. It was a dark ritual, I suppose, but it was a. So I became very involved when I came upon her. It was a path of synchronicity, which she taught me about the feminine and feminine energy, which is talked about in my books, which is a theme that comes up too sparingly in our society, but it's beginning to come up more and more. So all of this path led me to the discovery of the vindication of some of Hubbard's theories about implants, about society being controlled through implantation, which is very popular in the UFO world right now, the themes of implantation, mind control. And of course, when I began to get outside of the Scientology movement, which I was involved in, and begin to look and study at some of these theories, which was the antecedents of L. Ron Hubbard's Scientology, which was the Babylon Working, and study some of these things, I began to have a lot of synchronicity. And I later learned that synchronicity was a word coined by Carl Jung, the famous psychotherapist who split away from Sigmund Freud, that synchronicity was the precursor to experiencing the Tao, which means a word that the best way they can describe the Tao is the way, the underlying fundamental principle behind the nature of all things. So it's synchronizing. And what Florine said in the advertisement, if you will, for the Pythagoras conference, Florine is explained to me, and he personally spent time with me in my first trip to Atlanticron and explained some of the things that he said that he's going to explain to you at Pythagoras about Romania being the corpus callosum of the world. The corpus callosum is the part that integrates the two hemispheres of the brain. And there's a deep esoteric meaning to the corpus callosum, which I've written about in my books, including the book we're about to discuss, Mystery of Egypt. But it integrates both sides of the brain, and Romania represents that on the globe because it's the integration between East and West. And Florine is at a very special Center for Complexity Studies. His scientific acumen, he goes back to the communist days, where he was an incredible professor during the communist days, and that tradition is carried forth to the current times over there. His scientific disciplines are just amazing, and he integrates, the spiritual side too. So he helped set me on my path to Sarmiento, which is the capital of Transylvania, ancient Transylvania, which I visited with Dr. Nicole Vasilkovsky a few years ago. And so it's very important to say that in the context of the book we're about to discuss, Mystery of Egypt. That's just a tad about how I got involved in this, to answer your question.
Okay, everyone, we do apologize. We just got knocked off of our network at Blog Talk Radio, where we stream out live. This is actually the first that this has happened here on Otherworld Radio, and I'm hoping that we can get Peter back on here again. Let's see if we can grab Peter. If there's any way that we can get him back onto the call so that we can do this interview tonight. Peter, are you with us?
Yeah, what happened?
Peter, we just got knocked off of Blog Talk Radio Network. The whole network just went down while we were broadcasting live with you. The last that anyone heard you speaking about was Mr. Montaigne and the complexity sciences and what he was going to be talking about to me at Pythagoras Conference. If you can start from there, we're going to try to keep this broadcast going live.
Okay. So are we live now?
We are live right now. Go ahead, Peter.
Okay, I was just saying that, Florine had taught me that, Romania represents the corpus callosum of the world, integrating East and West. Did you hear that part?
Yes, we did, Peter.
Yep.
Okay.
We got
all right.
to the part where, go ahead.
Well, I was saying that this becomes very important in the context of what we're discussing in the current book, and it'll be wonderful if he can come to America in October and meet and share all that knowledge which he shared with me quite privately, and it'll be a great thing. So that's about how I got involved in all of this.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, let's go forward. In the last two previous interviews that you gave to Otherworld Radio, you gave our listeners so much information and insight about Romania, the Romanian Sphinx, discussing the characters in the book, Eleanor, Caesar, and Radu, and giving your insights into DNA. Last year, you were also heading back to Romania, the last that we spoke, and I guess what I'd love to ask you is what happened, what developed from that trip to present that you could share with our listeners about all the developments in your research as well, up to the publication of this new book, Mystery of Egypt, The First Tunnel.
Well, that's a very good question, because that was the fourth year consecutively I went to Romania I went with tour operator Marta Thomas and Dr. Nicole Vasilkovsky. And Nicole took us all around, acted as my secretary and Romanian translator. She was wonderful. And what is important to state here is I'm going back, this is the 5th year, I'm going back in August, and especially to my friends who are in Romania now listening to this, or the friends I don't have yet in Romania because I haven't met you, I'm going there this year with Jeanette Crowley, Jonette Crowley.com. She's a tour operator and a spiritual medium, and I'm going with her this year in August. I believe we start on the 8th or the 9th of August, and we're going to have Americans and Romanians, well, international, not just Americans, and Romanians with us. Now, the Romanian contingent will fill up very fast, as will the American. It's still openings with the Americans. But I asked her if we could have tag-alongs that could come with us if, they might not be part of the bus and all this sort of thing. But we're going to be going all around Romania to Sarmen Sejutuza. I know we'll be doing a seminar in Bucharest when it's all over. But if you want to participate or come, as far as I'm concerned, the more the merrier. So anyway, I wanted to state that. But what we did last year is we went back to the Sphinx, which is in the Bucegi Mountains, a couple hours, more or less, outside of Bucharest, north of Bucharest. And we took, instead of going up the cable cars to the Sphinx, I didn't realize you could take a car up there. This wonderful woman, Rena, joined us, and she organized to get a van, and we took a van up there. My Bulgarian friends visited us from Bulgaria, and we had a whole group of, friends that went up there, new friends for most of them, old friends for me. And we went up to the I guess it would be the north side of the Sphinx, and it's quite a bumpy ride when you get to the final part, and it was quite an adventure. And it was a beautiful day. You have to bring a jacket when you go up there because you're in a vertical climate. But one of the Bulgarians, who I couldn't pronounce his name, so I called him Batman, and everybody called him Batman, and he wore his gym shorts, and he was quite comfortable. It was a beautiful day at the Sphinx, and we wanted to go to Mount Omu, which is the mountain of man. But by the time we got there and the cable car was broken, so we didn't end up taking that. So we got all messed up schedule-wise, and we didn't have enough time to go there. But we met with some other Romanians up there, one of which, Lanuț, who I had met in Sarmen Sejutuza the previous year. I met her right in the middle part of the capital. This is the most sacred part of Transylvania. She was right in the solar calendar. And I saw her, and I went up and made friends with her, not being able to speak Romanian, and she does not speak English. We just maybe spoke a few words of each other's language. We made very close friends, and with her husband too. And I had Nicole come over and translate, or Christina, whoever I was with, and we had this great conversation. And Lanuț met with us at the top of the Sphinx, and it wasn't a horribly long meeting. They're only up there for an hour, maybe, or maybe a little more. And there were some Romanian dowsers. Most of these people, if not all, they only spoke Romanian. And the people I was with, the Romanians, they were going off in different directions. So I ended up having this cute little 10-year-old girl translate for me. She was with them. It was very adorable. She was doing all the translation. She was very good. And they took me, which is only a few yards from the Sphinx. There's these stone formations. I've been up there before, but they're doorways. They said, these are doorways. This is gateway 1, gateway number 2. And they're a gate from the Sphinx. I learned that the Sphinx faces north. So actually, when I said north before, I meant west. Come up from the west side. So as I was being shown these gateway, two of my Bulgarian friends were sitting on a rock, and they were facing in the same direction. they were sort of dowsing and picking up, and they said, "We want to go down there." They pointed in that direction, not knowing that I was being shown the gateway. They said, "This is the way to go. We need to go down that way," because we knew we weren't going to be able to go to Mount Omu, and there was a discussion of what we would do next. And down there is a cave, and you heard Florine talk about Zalmoxes. Well, this is by some traditions. Some people will argue, but it's all kind of legendary. The Cave of Zalmoxes. Okay, and there is a cable car that goes down there, which is different than the main cable car, which takes most of the tourists up to the Sphinx. It's this cable car is there's not too many people that are going to ride it compared to the other one. So you pay whatever it is. It might be $18. I have no idea. I don't remember. And you get in it, and you go down this mountain, which you can go down. You're going into a valley. It's a very beautiful. And when you get down to the bottom, you have to walk a ways, and you'll come. There's a spa down there, which is I'm hoping we'll stay at that spa hotel this summer, because it's just a beautiful place to stay. And you walk to this monastery. There's an old Orthodox monastery that's very ancient that is built right in front of the cave. And some people will have issues with the monastery for being built in front of the cave, because this is an ancient pagan site, and it's very typical in Bulgaria for the Orthodox Church to come and build their facilities or edifices right in front or on an ancient pagan site. So without getting into the esoteric controversy of that's what happens, whether you agree with it or not. And they've got a chapel right smack dab in front of the cave, which the cave is opening. It's big, and it's beautiful. It's like walking into the Bat Cave if you wanted to make an opening for the Batman movie, the Bat Cave. It's big, and then as you go in, and there's lights, and there's a pathway in the more areas that are harder to negotiate, and then it comes down. So this point where you have to crouch. I'm very tall, so I have to crouch down. I never had to get on my knees. It doesn't go that, but it's crouch worthy, and there's a little tight spots here where you might have to avoid some water here and there, and you go deep, and I don't know how deep. I think we went at least a quarter of a mile deep into this cave, and then it'll open up again, and it's just incredible, and just incredible. And there's a few places where they have a plaque that says of the ancient history of, the ancient Dacian king or priest, whoever was hanging out there. But when you go deep inside, it's like an initiation, because it seems forever when you're going inside. When you walk out, it doesn't take so long. But you get to the very end, and you can't go any further because there's going to be water, and it's very tight, and you can't negotiate the water. You're going to have boots. You're going to have climbing equipment. But it goes on, and I spoke to a man who went in there. He was Romanian, and he went in with boards and lights, flashlights and boards, so he could walk and negotiate. And he said about, I think it was 80 yards. And he says, and then it just opens up and goes. Then you need spelunking equipment. He says it goes all the way into the inner earth. And and I also learned from some of the people there that there's many of these. Now, this is right sort of the end, if you will, not quite the end of the Transylvanian Alps. And all along those Alps, which are the southern border of Transylvania, you have these huge caves that go into the earth like this, that go all the way in. And they might be more spectacular than the one I was in. And what I learned was that there's an inordinate amount of UFOs coming out of there. And this is a big state secret in Romania. And this was told, it's quite controversial. And I mean, I suppose some people believe in them and some people don't. I was told a lot of stories, which were quite gripping, which we won't go into. But this was utterly fascinating. So I was connecting viscerally with something that I hadn't connected before, and learning much more about Zalmoxes which was the patron god, if you will, of Romania. Zalmoxis is a very important character that people don't understand in the West. Florin was comparing him to Pythagoras. Well, and he's the first one to tell me this, but if you look in, I've even looked in Romanian history, and Zalmoxis comes far before Pythagoras, although he's, in common history will tell you that he's a disciple of Pythagoras. That's not true. Zalmoxis is said to have taught the Egyptians their religion. And Moxes is where we get the word Moses. It's much more ancient than Moses. And it's where the Yiddish word moxie comes from, to have moxie. Zalmoxis means leaping God or leaping Messiah. So this is a fascinating part of where I was journeying and where that journey took me. Florin also mentioned a project in Romania where they're building an edifice of the representation of what Radu Cinnabar talks about in the book Transylvania Sunrise, of this underground chamber beneath the Sphinx, which is quite large. He told me that someone is building he didn't tell me who, but they're building a replica. He's involved in it somehow.
Interesting.
Which is a theatrical replica, not the actual technology, as far as I know. That's a little bit of what I learned on my last trip, but it's important. This is the context of ancient humanity. Humanity originated from this general area, which we know as the Thracians and then the Proto-Thracians, who were the same Thracians as just another word for Trojans, which went back far before they got to Turkey and Ilium. They were up in that area of the, Ural Mountains on both sides, part of which is this area of Romania, and this is why it's called the Corpus Callosum. This is ancient history, and the history of Romania is not like they teach in the history books in America, because it's all been diluted and convoluted. So part of my journey is uncovering this, and part of the works of Radu Cinnabar are kind of clarifying this ancient history, which it only registers in our normal history in lame or snippets that aren't quite accurate.
Well, Peter, we're at the 30-minute mark into our show, which we normally will take a music break. When we come back on the other side, what I'd love to do is talk to you a little bit about Eleanor, Cesar, and Radu, and go into the new journey now with Mystery of Egypt, the First Tunnel, and also ask you some questions about the Romanian language and the root thereof, of the language. We'll be coming right back. And we are back. When we left, we were speaking with Peter Moon, and he was sharing some wonderful insights about his last trip to Romania. And Peter was sharing with us a little bit about Florin Montanu and about all the wonderful developments on his trip. We were going to get into a little bit about the characters that were in the previous two books, Eleanor, Cesar, and Radu. And my question for Peter as well, I was going to ask Peter about the Romanian language and the root thereof of the Romanian language. So let's begin now on our new journey. And I'll be honest with you, Peter, this is the first time I haven't been able to read the book by Radu before doing an interview with you. So if we could, let's discuss a little bit about Mysteries of Egypt, the First Tunnel. Where and how does this book begin, leading off from the previous one?
Okay. Do you want me to answer the question about the language first?
Absolutely, Peter.
Okay, the Romanian language is where we get the word Romance language. And you'll be taught in most schools, if not all schools, that the Romance languages are all derived from Latin. Well, why aren't they called Latin languages? The reason they derive the proof of this, and most the learned Romanians, like Professor Montanaro, he knows this. He's one of the people who taught me. He's not the only one. My friend Dr. Vasilkovsky, who's a linguist par excellence. She speaks Chinese, Japanese, Romanian, English, French, you name it, German, Italian. Oh yeah, no question. You see, and in typical history, they'll tell you that Roman Romania was named after the Romanian generals who retired from Rome and went to Romania. This is how it got the name Romania. This is not true. It might have helped promote the name that way, but the language itself that those generals spoke at that time was vulgar Latin. What they know, there's classical Latin and there's vulgar Latin. Vulgar Latin is the more later vulgarized version of classical Latin. The Romanian language is closer to classical Latin, which they did not speak in Rome at that time. So you can't have people teaching, going to Romania and giving you a language that's like classical Latin. It shows that it's much more ancient. So it doesn't. The history story doesn't make sense. And of course, those who know the language better will see its greater connection to Indo-European as opposed to Latin, which is also connected to Indo-European. But anyway, that's just a bit about the language. How we get from Book 2 to Book 1. Well, Book 2 ends with this incredible story of Radu going to the mountains of Transylvania with the alchemist named Eleanor and Ripasundi, the Lama who is also known as Dr. Zen in Book 1, the man who taught Caesar Brad, the incredible psychic individual who's the head of Department Zero, Romania's most secretive intelligence department, their cult department. So they are in Transylvania, where Radu is taken, and they meet these group of about 30 kids who have dreamt. They've all had dreams. They all came independent. They didn't come together. They were told to meet in this area in the Apuseni Mountains, and they all find each other, and they're waiting. The dream told us somebody would guide us, and the dream was from Mashande, this blue goddess who said, come to this area. And, of course, they're the ones that are going to guide them. They take them up a little ways, and Mashande, after this huge lightning storm appears with all these, this whole change in the space, Mashande appears to everyone, and Radu is in sort of what I would call in the great stillness. So what we would say in Taoism is the great stillness. He's induced into the great stillness where he meets Mashande, and he has this incredible spiritual experience, which there's not really much for him to say about it. It was rather profound. He was receiving a very profound initiation while they sat there and let him sit in this stupor and waited for him, Eleanor and the Lama. And that's how the book ends. And where it picks up is that the Lama arranges for Radu, with Eleanor, for Radu to become the keeper of his villa in Bucharest, which is a very nice, incredible, new, call it an exotic villa because it's full of ancient library, and the basement is this alchemical laboratory, which he describes at the beginning of Book 1, and with all these flasks and vials and tubes, and Radu is given an experience with some sort of chemical, which kind of is a major enlightenment. It's like taking a drug, only it's not a drug. It's some ancient alchemical formula, which gives him a very profound consciousness experience, and that's discussed ever so briefly because that's not the focal point. So Eleanor is this mysterious character who was the go-between between Radu and the Lama. He introduced the two of them. And he is going to leave the country, probably for security reasons, because he does not yet older. He's getting younger or maintaining his youth. He's like 60-plus years old, and he looks like he's 30, so it's said. And he's got other people on his tail, but he's also got a great network of support. So he's leaving the country. He wants Radu to take care of his property for him. And that's where it begins. And then it begins with Radu finding out, as he's reading in the library, he wants a book from the library. He ever so much wants his old friend Caesar from Department Zero to be there to explain some things to him. He's wishing and longing for him. And he gets a call out of the blue. Caesar is somebody he hasn't seen in a long time. It's been years, at least a year, I think. Maybe two. And he says, well, he says, can you meet me? Caesar says, can you meet me, Radu? He says, yes. So he comes over to his apartment, And they have this long discussion, much of it about synchronicity, and he wants to recruit Radu for Department Zero, which is now Radu is being taken to the inside. It's very touchy why they would even allow him in, because you don't get welcome into the secret government just out of the blue, particularly if you're a controversial author. And the reason and rationale is that Department Zero has had a liaison with the Lama. They know him as Dr. Zen. And there was a correspondence where Dr. Zen told them of certain events that were coming forth and what did they want to do about it. And they wanted to respond option A. They changed their mind, realizing it was wrong. They don't say what option A is. They wanted to do option B now, and they wanted to contact him. And they didn't know how to contact him, and they pay attention to secret channels, and they knew that Radu was the last person to see him. So Caesar uses this as a pretext to recruit Radu into Department Zero. And he's accepted. And he's even told by General Obadiah, who's their ally, he says that it doesn't matter that you can't contact him right now, but this is a principle of quantum affinity. We want you here. So that's just how he gets recruited in Department Zero. And the next thing he's being told is you're going to go on a journey through the first tunnel in the chamber of the Buchegi Sphinx, and you're going to go all the way to the chamber beneath the Giza Plateau, which Caesar has visited many times before. And that's where they're going to go. And it's quite an adventure. It's an incredible story. Whether you believe it or not, it's an incredible story. And that's kind of how the book begins.
Hi, Peter. This is Heather. Yeah, it's. I have to say that I thought that it was a really interesting, incredible book. And first, I just want to welcome you, and it's just great to have you here tonight. I thought that the backdrop that you gave as far as leading us to exactly where I want to go with my questions tonight was just superb and right on the mark. It was, and my first question to you tonight is, I thought that it was really interesting, the notion that it was not just about having good intentions. There seems to there's a long discussion in it about good and evil and this, and one of the comments is it's not just about having good intentions, but having an inner strength, which includes a strong aura to carry these intentions. So my question to you is, how does one strengthen their aura or achieve this inner strength? Is that talked about?
Yeah, the book gives us some very good examples about building your inner strength, your inner core, and the way you do that. This is something that I practice daily, which is Taoist Qigong. Qigong is breath work. You breathe. You're breathing. Breath is life. So when you increase your breath, you increase your life. Now, that may sound very simple. It may sound oversimplistic, but it is the most powerful force in the universe, and you cannot believe how breathing. This is how your yogis that can do miraculous things is through the breath, and the ancient secrets of Qigong are through the breath, and it will strengthen your aura. It will strengthen everything, because breath is life. Control your breath. Control your life.
Oh, wonderful. So not even just through meditation, which a lot of people think of as breath work, but then also the other arts like Qigong and yoga and things like this. They're all associated with breath work.
They are. Yes, but most of it does not emphasize the breath enough. Even people who study yoga do not emphasize the breath enough. They will use it, but I know many yoga practitioners who aren't anywhere near as healthy as they could be, should be, or would be, and but the breath is just utterly magical and And he also goes into some fascinating discussions about breathing is related to the ability to withstand time travel or movement through time. He goes into spends a lot of time. It's kind of a covert explanation of Qigong, because I don't know if he even mentions Qigong in the book, but Caesar, but he actually has a certain adeptship in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I would actually consider that almost one of the main hearts of the book is the breath, if I was to lay it out, because of the way that it's thought about, talked about, and utilized throughout the entire journey. It pops up in multiple capacities. So, and in Chapter 2, you speak about people being a reflection of their own thoughts. Peter, what's your understanding of subtle energy and in relation to the Qigong that you practice, and what thought is and the impact that it has?
Well, I think it was the Buddha who is quoted in history as saying, all we are is a result of all we have thought. And, that there is obviously the mind is the conduit between the body and the spirit. I hear some interference here. The mind is the conduit between the body and the spirit. The thought is the conduit between the spirit and the mind. So I hear this horrible echo.
It's all interconnected.
Yeah, including the echo. But anyway, so yeah, it's all interconnected. So that is if you want to change the manifestation, you change the thought, because you will become what you think. It may not happen overnight, but if you think that life is horrible, life will turn out to be horrible. If you think it's beautiful, it will turn out to be that way. The change might not happen overnight, but you need to think. You need to create your own reality. That's the key ingredient to accomplishing things. Is just like when you draw up a drafting board. You draw up a drafting board of a house, then you build the house. Well, if you want to have a happy life, you better build up a drafting board to a happy life. Otherwise, it might not work out that way.
Well said. Yeah, I completely agree. Hey, we have some callers already, so let's jump to those callers if you can, Sandra. Who do we have tonight?
Absolutely. We have caller calling in from area code 714. You're on live with international author Peter Moon. Caller, are you with us?
Evidently not.
Okay.
Dropped off.
All right, we'll go to our next caller. Caller in area code 917, you're on live with international author Peter Moon.
Hello?
Hello, you are on live. May we get your name and where you're calling in from?
My name is Gail. I'm calling from New York, and I'm really just listening. I'm so fascinated with Peter Moon. I love him. I'm always listening to him on the blog talk whenever I can get a chance. But I'm really just listening. I'm fascinated with his book, and I will be buying it.
Outstanding, outstanding. We would direct anyone to go to skybooksusa.com and pick up the new book tonight. Thank you so much, caller.
Yes, thank
Wonderful.
you. And
thank
you. Out of world.
Thank you.
All right, Heather, we're back to you.
We are back. Great to hear from our callers from around the world that call in and chime in. Awesome. Peter, I wanted to ask you another theme that seems to run throughout this book that I recognized was this crystal connection. Can you talk to us and our listeners tonight about the crystal connection in the book?
Well, yeah, he has when he gets to the chamber in the Giza Plateau, which is full of surprises and interesting things, one of the main devices that affects time travel to take place in this particular book, time consciousness, the consciousness of time travel. You don't really move your body. This is something you can go back and look at past events. It's a bioresonant chamber. Bioresonant means that it's using what's inside of your mind, and amplifying it, and then going. That's how you're accessing the timeline. But this is through a crystal device, which is described. And there's even some illustrations of how the whole diagram is set up. But the crystal, to answer your question about the crystal or why is a crystal important, we have to remember that all of radio frequency technology, called RF technology, is based upon crystals. You know, your radio sets have quartz crystals in them, and this is what oscillates or vibrates to get you your signal. It's the carrier. It's a transmitter. So see, this is what radio technology. This is not a fiction. People will talk about crystals being New Age or hocus pocus. Well, this is radio technology is therefore hocus pocus, because this is what it's based upon, is the crystal.
Right.
And so when you talk about, this is the more mundane understanding of a crystal. It's a transmitter. But if you go into the more esoteric aspects of a crystal, where it gets into the metaphysical realm, a crystal also transmits dark energy. And dark energy is a term in physics. I believe it's relatively new. But it's dark energy is scientists have found that just like we don't use all of our brain, we don't use all of our lungs to breathe, we don't use all of our brain to think. Well, science has not been able to classify and categorize most of what consists of energy or matter. We have dark energy and dark matter. You can call it occult energy, or the occult properties of energy, which science has not codified. And just like our DNA, most of our DNA, we don't understand. It's not been codified by science. A tremendous amount has been, but that's so. This is like this. We're moving right into occultism. So yes, crystals can transmit dark energy. They do transmit dark energy, and if the practitioners of an arcane science know what they're doing, it can transmit it and organize it in a way that our science would be totally lost. If that answers your question.
Yeah, I was amazed too. I also thought about and was interested to they had a particular number of crystals that they used throughout the book, and for some reason this fascinated me. In some of the areas of the tunnel and everything, and it just made me think of the significance not only of the material, but maybe even the numbers that they had of the material of these crystals. So it was really interesting part for me in that respect. But also, one thing that I wanted to mention and get your thoughts on in the book was about the light. When they're traveling, they talk about this light, and it was a violet light that was described. And when I was reading the book, it really made me think of the different chakras, the color, the vibration, the frequency maybe it held, the meditative state that it seemed to put the people that were traveling in. So what are your thoughts about this? Do you think that there's any significance at all, or
significance
to the color and
yeah, I think there's a lot.
To the colors
obviously,
of light?
there's obviously, because you have to remember that light and the colors are the electromagnetic spectrum is a bending of the light. So it's the light is being bent, just like David Anderson talks about twisting space and time. Well, they're also twisting space and time here, because that tunnel, the first tunnel, which we haven't mentioned, is not like the other two tunnels. The other tunnels are considered more ancient, but they're actual physical tunnels. The first tunnel starts out as a physical tunnel for several yards, but then it turns into a space-time distortion. And this puzzles them greatly, including this incredible scientist, Aiden, who comes with them from the United States, who's kind of a super tech nerd. And he's along with him with his holographic computer, which he's tied to telepathically, literally, and this computer is tied to Hilbert space, which is interdimensional space. It's amazing concepts for science fiction, let alone a real story. And what basically he's trying to figure out how this tunnel's made, and they basically can figure it out is it kind of runs in tandem. It's like a parallel universe, or it's a part of space. It runs in tandem with this universe. It's tied to the crystals, and of course that violet space is very relaxing. It relaxes the mind. It puts one into an alternate reality, literally an altered state, altered reality. So of course it's going to follow the laws of, and the purple light is very powerful. It's something we use in Qigong to douse yourself in purple light is very healing. It's a very healing color, and it's, the highest part of the spectrum. So it would make sense that it's violet.
Yeah, I agree. Hey, we've got some email blasts coming in.
All right, Peter, we got some email blasts coming in from actually across America for you. One is from Kevin in Kentucky. He says, Peter, can you give us some information about Dr. David Anderson? What happened to his website? This is one of 3 questions for Peter.
Okay,
Peter.
If you go to my website, blog, www.digitalmontauk.com, you'll see some information on Dr. David Anderson. You can read further. Basically, David is off the radar and really dedicated to his time control research, which the last time I saw him in person, I said, because he says, all I have is a little, a bed and a bunk and this is what I do. And he says, I don't have time. He used to have a, nice townhouse in Rochester. Now he was just living almost a subsistence, functional survival. And I said, are you happy? He says, very. He was very happy. He loves doing this research. He was living in a government facility at the time. And now he's been either in New Mexico or in, the DG Hills of India near Mumbai. As far as I know. I mean, I really don't know where he is, but he's a world traveler, I mean, he's been in China, he's been in the Orient, he's been all over. So, and he travels with world leaders are his friends and colleagues. So I really don't know where he is, but I know that he's working very hard and that there's been a lot of sniping about him, even saying ridiculous things like his foundation doesn't exist. Well, Heather here is the president of the foundation, and you can see this foundation in Romania, but most people don't even, know Romania is, let alone visit it. So yeah, it's a very active foundation, and David is a very real person. It's just that he has to. There's a lot of controversy that's occurred around his technology because it makes people react because it's so far ahead of the curve, and it tells us that everything that we thought about ourselves is not accurate as a body politic, as a body people. So yeah, that's why he hasn't. That's why he's been under the radar.
Okay, wonderful question.
In my opinion.
Okay, thank you, Kevin in Kentucky. We have one from Initial M in Louisiana. Peter, can you ask Peter about what happens to Mashundi in the Transylvania series? This is from M.
Well, boy, I would like to know what happens because she's mentioned maybe a couple times in book 3, but no, all these books are delightfully different. They're delightfully in a different, and book 4, which I've not read yet, is, I'm told, I had a discussion about it last night with one of my friends in Romania, said it's also a very different book. Now, those are that contains the 5 Tibetan initiation techniques, which Mashundi, the manuscript that Mashundi was keeping. It's not her manuscript, but she was keeping it. So that's, I imagine she's mentioned. But this might, so I really don't know what the update is on her. You might get a contact from her in a dream now and then or something if you're very lucky, and I've tried to do that. One of my friends has had dreams sort of connected to me with her, but they're kind of obscure. I forget what they are right now, but best way to contact Mashundi is through the dream state this particular time.
Great question, M, for Louisiana. One more here from Michael in Switzerland for Peter Moon. Peter, I want to know more about Dr. Hien. Is he in the new book? Michael from Switzerland.
Well, yeah, he's not featured. He's mentioned here and there. And one of the interesting things they say about him, and I would like to as well. I suspected that he might even know David, but I don't know that. That's my speculation. Dr. Zen, it says that they're trying to contact him very desperately. The Romanians are, and Caesar explains that it's like when you're too busy in your office and you have to take your phone off the hook. That's what happens, because he's processing a lot of things in a lot of different other functions. So it's not like he's at our beck and call to explain to us what's going on. He's dealing with important matters, most likely of an interdimensional nature, where his attention and his very vast abilities are needed. So he's kind of got things, he's kind of unplugged. But they give a insight or two into what he might be like, but not featured.
And hopefully featured maybe in the next book. Obviously, we'll see where it's going.
I wouldn't venture to say that, but where this really leads to the most intriguing thing, which if you go to the website digitalmontauk.com, you go to the John Ford case. It's a very important case right now, and you can download my newsletter, which talks a little bit about what I'm about to say. Is Eleanor, the character in the book. Radu wrote me a letter for Christmas, and it was kind of a neat Christmas present. He told me that he just met with Eleanor, this mysterious alchemist, and he said he demonstrated things for me which were remarkable. He says, I've always wanted to show you proof. He's promised me in 2 letters prior to this that he's going to show me some proof. In this 3rd letter, in about a 3-month period, he says, you're going to meet such a person as Eleanor, which is a pseudonym. It's Eleanor. In other words, he's telling me I'm going to meet Eleanor, and it's going to be between that time and basically November. So I should meet him before November. It's going to be, he's going to surprise me, and I'm going to have a very short meeting. He says 5 minutes. You can turn it into a half hour, and you're going to be delivered some proof of the things I've been telling you. Now, that's meeting amazing. Eleanor, and Eleanor, you got to remember, is the friend of the Lama. So this is if all of these things in this book are true, and the great longevity tradition that they discuss in Transylvania Moonrise, it would appear that I'm going to get some access to this tradition. I'm already pre-qualified myself for it with all the breathing that I've been doing with the work of Grandmaster Roosevelt Gainey in Brooklyn, New York. So, and he's at their level in many respects. Incredible. So this is part of my initiation, and because I'm a writer, I take people with me as far as educating and learning, and it's a very fascinating prospect. So I would, of course, love to meet Dr. Zen. I would love to meet Radu. Radu has always said he'd like to meet me, and there's always security issues surrounding it. And I've always predicted quite intuitively that after Book 4 is translated, and that I will get to meet Radu. And you have to understand that when I finish publishing all their books in the American language, the English language, I will have done a service to them, and they will appreciate that because I'm getting their word out. I put my own 2 cents into it, but so I would imagine that there will be a commensurate response to saying, well, thank you, we'd like to continue working with you. That's sort of the thing you forget about when you're doing the work, because you're doing the work just to do the work. You know, I mean, in my case, I'm not looking for, I'm not doing it so that they will do favors for me, but it would be it would make sense. So we look forward to that.
It'll all come back around. Yeah.
Exactly.
Hey, Peter, when I was telling about, there were 3 things that seemed to pop out of this book for me, and one was the breath, and we've talked about that, and I want to go more into that. The second one that was interesting to me was the crystalline structures in these crystals and how they were utilized for different things throughout the book. And the third one was about time. Can you talk to us tonight and our listeners about the contracting of it, the accelerating of it, what this meant for the story and in the book, and then maybe what this means for us today
I wish we had David here to talk about that. Time is illusory. It's an illusion. So, we're living here in a time. We see time because of a distortion. When you remove the distortion, you see it differently. So it's like in a lot of ways, it's like that holodeck on Star Trek: The Next Generation. We're in this program where we see all these things according to the way this program lives, with death and life as part of the program. When you can supersede that and get to the source code, you're going to get, you're going to descramble that. Now, on the way between descrambling the source code and living in this illusion, there's many gray areas in between. And this is what this book begins to penetrate, those gray areas, keeping in mind that it's bioresonant. That, in other words, when you sit in that chair, so to speak, which is basically a mind amplifier, not unlike the Montauk Project chair. This is I call a more sanitized version of the Montauk chair, and an earlier version.
Yeah.
And an earlier version of it, but there is censorship issues involved in it. And this is when Caesar talks about his experience going in, he says, well, there's certain areas you can't go to. Like you can't go and say, who made this device? They won't, you can't know. Access denied, access denied. So there's censorship involved. There's censorship, and David Anderson says that censorship is the main ingredient in defense technology. It's like censorship is the big way countries defend themselves and attack. That's what the Department of Defense is all about. It's all about censorship. What you can know this, you can't know this. It's all about censorship. So this occurs, and I liken it in the epilogue to the book which I write. It's like the mystery schools. This is like an ancient mystery school in our modern times, which are iterations of the tree of life. These are things you find out you're being initiated. So censorship is always a part of any environment, just by the nature of the way environments work. So we're still having to deal with it. And I also point out in the book that censorship with a C is very much related phonetically, if not etymologically, to censorship with an S, senses. And it comes back from that Latin word census, which they determined public morals and what was fit to do and what was fit not to do. So the censor has to do with sensitivity, has to do with your senses and what you're allowed to perceive. So it's very, very subtle. It's very subtle, and this is a more amplified version of of the microcosm, and that's a part of that environment in that secret world that they're in. Is they're not allowed to think or go anywhere they want, although there is a great liberal option open to them.
Right. Mm-hmm. Tendra, we have a caller?
Absolutely. We have callers online for you, Peter. Caller from area code 502, you're on live with international author Peter Moon.
Greetings. This is Brennan from Louisville, Kentucky, and I am a big fan of George Peter as well as of Dr. Anderson. I got to speak to him on this very show on the 23rd of December 2009, and specifically what I'm calling about is a time travel type issue, but it's not trying to go through time, just get a message back to the 26th of February 2009. A friend of mine was on an ultralight that ended up having taken off in pre-flight, and it unfortunately stalled and crashed out in California. And what my goal is I want to be able to figure out how can I communicate back to the 26th of February 2009 and say to my friend, stay off of that ultralight, and therefore to save his life. And so David Anderson said that the technology definitely exists at this moment, or even in 2009 when we spoke about it, as well as he said, though, it's not in the public hands, and it probably never will. He encouraged me to try to push whichever political buttons I could to get that technology released. But you and I know that that's probably never going to happen. How do you suggest that I try to get a message back to 2009 to tell my friend to stay off that ultralight?
Well, it might have a lot more to do with his viewpoint than it does with yours. And you might be being selfish by wanting that fate for him to be that way, because what's happened has happened. It's all illusory. Death is all illusory. And you're putting your dictate through your position in this domain. He might, I really don't know his fate. He might be joyously happy that he's in that other world right now. So, he might be okay with it. I'm not saying he is okay with it because I really don't know. So it's like you're coming from the small position of an incarnated body on this earth to trying to say, well, you want him to be incarnated and back in this timeline. It might not be in his best interest. It's an assumption, really, what it is. It's like your viewpoint is very self-determined from your perspective. The first thing I would do is I would seek out all other perspectives before making a definitive approach, all other perspectives. That's the best I can do for you, and I would also wish you good luck.
And I think, even the book, the new book, they talked about not being able to intervene, and the importance of that as far as the issues of going back into the past. I remember them talking about that. Hey, Peter, was there anything that surprised you in the book? And if there is, what is it and why?
Before, it very much relates to, I can give an additional addendum to his answer, by the way. I wrote a book, the Montauk Book of the Dead, which tells the story of how I got, in the Montauk Book of the Living as well, how I got involved in so much of this time travel research through the death of my parents and wanting to help. So that kind of set me on this journey. I was not trying to bring them back, but I was trying to create a more compassionate world because they were killed in an automobile accident. And I said, and I was at a very high, in a most high spiritual state I've ever been in. I said, if I could, what do I want to do with the rest of my life? And I said, I want to make environment more friendly, more user-friendly, so that if somebody has an accident, it's more like Play-Doh, so you can reconfigure their bodies and stuff in that line. And it sent me on this incredible journey, because right then I had a translation in space and time like Radu talks about, only I wasn't quite so aware of it. I was only vaguely aware of it, but I was aware of it. And so it set me on this journey. It's kind of like reaching out for that lost part of you, and in this case, my family, and it might apply to your own situation as well, Heather. It's like what surprised me in the book were some of the things that Caesar talks about going back to the time of Christ. It kind of focuses on that. That threw me for a loop because it was something I didn't expect, and it didn't resonate with my preconceived ideas of the way history played out from either a logical or an intuitive standard. So those provided some great challenges for me, which I addressed in the epilogue with a lot of esoteric information, where you'll find in this book is the only book that I know of that goes into the full etymology of the name Jesus Christ and where it came from and what it means, and with a lot of details on it. I could have even gone deeper, but I didn't have the space, because when most people utter the words Jesus Christ, especially the Christians, they don't know what the hell they're talking about. It's not even the original name. They don't know what they're saying. They might as well be saying cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, because they don't understand what they're talking about. They don't really understand. So every time they utter that name, which is a transliteration and a bastardization of the actual name, it waters down the actual concept and waters down the actual divinity of what that was supposed to represent, let alone did represent. So as I say, this thing is bioresonance, and if you put me in that chamber, you're going to come up with a lot of different. I might be sending the sensors, making them go crazy, because they might not like what I'm asking to. Then again, they might take me on different journeys. I don't know. I don't know if I'll ever get a chance to sit in that chair, but it's a fascinating thing. And as I stated in the beginning of that epilogue, is the wisdom in ancient Taoism. You want to have the wisdom of all mankind, not just one person, not just my viewpoint, not just their viewpoint, not just your viewpoint. That's why I told that gentleman in Kentucky to seek out all the other viewpoints, not just your own, and then you get outside of yourself.
Indeed.
Right, and then in addition to that, too, Peter, you write about the fact that, within understanding all those perspectives and seeking out those perspectives, that one truth for somebody might be a mockery to somebody else. So within all that, it's really discovering that truth for what it is for you.
Exactly. Caesar says that. Yeah, the what is true for you might be a mockery. Like if often in Christianity or Islam, they consider those other religions abominations or mockeries of the other ones. So that's true in real life. But he says that's what happens in that chamber. And that's why I identify it as a mind amplifier.
Mhm. Mhm. We have another caller.
Okay, caller from area code 714. You're on live with international author Peter Moon.
Yeah, hi.
Area code 714.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
This is Dr. Newton.
Well,
Hi there. How are you tonight?
Good.
You have a question for Peter Moon.
I have more of I would like to corroborate the things he said. Very important what he said about the breath and in regards to meditation and that. I haven't done Qigong, but I've done a lot of Tai Chi, especially standing meditation. And in the last 20 years, I probably focused on Kriya Kundalini Pranayama, which is a very extended breath. And when you get into these breath states, not only these like Qigong and Kriya Kundalini Pranayama and the Tai Chi standing meditation, you literally are infusing the body with more prana, more light, more chi, more life force. Patanjali talks about it in the Yoga Sutras, and also Krishna talks about it in the Bhagavad Gita, where they said that literally by these specialized breaths that you're literally infusing the body with light and fire, and that there's magnetic oxidation which takes place in the body. So this prana and the chi and the life force, these are basically electromagnetic things. So it basically works into literally putting the body more into a light body rather than into a physical body. And this also allows you, I found many times when I'm doing this that I completely lose track of time. And I'm saying, where did that time go? And then I go, oh, well, I must have been warping time, or I must have suspended time. So everything that Peter has said is very true. And also what he said about going back in time and bringing back your friends, that's all true, everything he said. I talk about this in great depth in my book that's coming out, A Map to Healing and Your Essential Divinity. And I'm just really happy to hear someone that is talking about it like I know it, but from slightly different angles, because it gives me.
Send me a link. Send me a link on the net. Put it up on my blog.
Thank you. Thank you, caller, for calling in.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right, Peter, I wanted to ask you real quick. You mentioned a lot about prana in the new book. Can you talk to our listeners a little bit about prana?
Well, I don't mention prana. That's that's Caesar talking about prana, which is just basically the Hindu term for breath or life. You know, we have chi. It's two different systems. Prana, life, breath, spirit, all means the same thing.
Okay. All right.
The same light. So, Peter, for somebody that's coming out to just pick up your book and doesn't, has only really just heard about you through this show and the whole series and everything, do you have any information or something that you would say to that person before they pick this book up?
Well, I would say to start The Mystery of Egypt, start with the Transylvania Sunrise book and or the book, The Montauk Project Experiments in Time, which are both on the website, skybooks.usa.com. And there's a special offer on Mystery of Egypt right now. The book is, shipping today or tomorrow, and we'll have it next week and shipping it out.
Wonderful.
At Skybooks. So I just put up on the website, you can go and buy it now. It won't be sent out till about a week from now, but you can go buy it right now. It's an advanced $19 instead of $22. So, you can get that right now. But start if you're new to this, start with Transylvania Sunrise or with the Montauk Project.
Certainly holds more meaning if you go and start with the first one, as it sort of builds and you learn the characters as well.
But I do try to write every book. I will put a prologue or an introduction that will get people anybody who picks up any book that I've ever published, where they can start on that book if they want, because I give a little bit of a, summary of what had happened. But of course, it's better to go and see the whole thing. These books are all available on Kindle and Nook as well, and some of them on iTunes. The new one, iTunes has been submitted, but it takes some weeks to approve it. So it's on Nook and Kindle.
Okay. All right, Peter. I have a question for you, and this is one question that I've always wanted to ask you personally. Do you feel that these books are of this time, or do you think that they were written at a future time, back to this time?
Well, I think they were written in this time, most certainly. But I think that they were influenced by events which happened outside of this time. Influenced. Not necessarily predicated, but influenced. Which means partially predicated, partially caused by events that happen outside of this time. So yeah, we're all strung together, and part of that stringing together is events that happen outside of the timeline.
Thank you, Peter. Heather.
Absolutely, and it's such a thrilling book to read. I haven't been able to put it down, so I really want to recommend it to every one of our listeners out there. Go and get the books. Get the first one. Get the second one. Grab this one. I'm waiting with anticipation for the next one. So I thank you so much, Peter, for being able to be here tonight and share. So what's next for you, Peter?
I've made an agreement.
The next book.
I've made an agreement with my translator in Romania to do the fourth book, Raghu's fourth book, which is going to be called The Secret Parchment, 5 Tibetan Initiation Techniques, which I'm eager to get translated, which the translation has not begun. I'm eager to get it and do that. That's the next plan right now. And I'm also working on the John Ford UFO case, which is just a public good works activity I'm doing. It's very important you go to the website Digital Montauk and look up the John Ford UFO case, because this is a man who's been incarcerated for 16 years without ever having committed a crime. And it's a writ of habeas corpus is going to be filed. He's the Nelson Mandela of the UFO movement. So this is I've written. You can get the downloads, the PDF of a 100-page press release he wrote 10 years ago about his situation. A lot of it has to do with a UFO crash on Long Island that took place. He was the head UFO investigator on Long Island, and they put him away. The politicians are now dead who put him away, but there's still a reluctance to release him. And he's not a violent criminal. And he's in an insane asylum for the violently, criminally insane. And he's not. He's never been violent, and he's a political prisoner. And so I want to create as much awareness. I believe Sandy said we're going to do a show on him.
Absolutely. We'll have a whole episode dedicated to John, and that's coming up on otherworldradio.com.
Yeah, fascinating.
Okay. Heather, I know that you had, let's see, we were going to talk a little bit real quick. I think you had one more question, or were we going to go ahead?
Well, I can just, I just wanted to hand the floor to Peter and talk to our listeners tonight about, any last comments about the book.
Okay.
And to share with our listeners, where to find it once again. And
absolutely. Make sure that everyone goes to www.skybooks.usa.com. That's skybooks.usa.com, or digitalmontauk.com. That's digitalmontauk.com, and pick up Mysteries of Egypt, the First Tunnel, after tonight's broadcast. Also, Peter, I wanted to say, too, personally, as we close out the show tonight, how amazing your research is. And I don't think that the public really has a grasp of how amazing your research truly is. And I just wanted to say that through the last couple of years, not much light has been on your work. And I just wanted to say that to our listeners around the world tonight that are listening to this broadcast, that Peter does tremendous research. You're going to be hearing about so many things as far as the future to come through Peter and Skybooks USA. And I just wanted to say that to you, Peter, that we care about you. And thank you for taking us on this journey.
Well, yeah, thank you. And there's going to be, it's perhaps good that it's been quiet, because sometimes you can get more done when the spotlight is not on you so much. And I never wanted to be in the spotlight personally. It's kind of it's just the way things worked out. Especially if you're writing books, you want attention. It's not really something I've wanted. And there is going to be. There are negotiations right now to take some of the work, the earlier work, and to do it in a much bigger media format. I'm not going to say too much about that right now, but this is all aligned with the stars astrologically. It's time for some of this to come out and get a more broader exposure. But the best secret of all is the Qigong I practice. All of this research led me to the Qigong with Grandmaster Roosevelt Gainey, who was introduced to me by the Montauk Medicine Man. All came through Montauk. So this is very important stuff, and the secrets, the great wonder, and all this, talk about this wonderful research, well, it's all inside of you. It's all of this stuff comes from, it's all internal. So all my work represents is the incredible things you can discover in yourself, in your DNA, in your mind, and all these incredible characters that are discussed in the book, David Anderson included. These characters are, they hold secrets that are already inside of you, and you can discover the access to those secrets inside of yourself. And that's the whole message in all of this. Self-empowerment, self-realization, self-actualization. That's what I have to say about that.
It's a wonderful message, Peter. It's a wonderful message to leave with our listeners tonight, Peter. Your work, the book, the importance of breath, and the importance of that inner journey. So I just want to thank you so much for being here.